these proceedings are here to see that justice is done. And justice is, as any reasonable person would tell you, the finding of the truth. Only we have a problem here.
Every once in a while, there is a news day that is just overwhelming. So much is going on. It's insane. And today was definitely one of those days. But something that came out over the weekend, I have to take a moment to address.
We told you on TMZ Live last week that the thing that may have taken him into this fatal spiral was that they changed his meds for a mental condition called schizoaffective disorder.
Let's briefly review what the symptoms of schizoaffective disorder are. Now, as we are going through this, keep in mind that this diagnosis can so easily be misdiagnosed or confused with other diagnoses because there is tremendous overlap. And this is the challenge that all mental health professionals, and in particular psychiatric professionals, have to face. The most common way that we think about schizoaffective disorder is as a psychotic disorder and a mood disorder combined. And most of the time, that means depression, but not always. And as you can see in these symptoms, that makes sense. Social withdrawal is a common symptom of depression, and unchanging facial expressions, right? Somebody just being fundamentally depressed can often manifest in sort of a flat affect or just, right? Nothing, no matter what is going on around someone, their mood is just not changing, or their expression, their facial expression, how they are communicating emotion is unchanging. The symptoms of schizoaffective disorder can include hallucinations or delusions. And just to be clear about what these words mean, hallucination simply means sort of sensory information that is coming in a confused way, right? So seeing things that are not there objectively, hearing things that are not there objectively, hearing things that other people are not, seeing things that other people are not, right? So hallucinations are clear cut, because if I'm hearing voices and you don't hear them, that's a hallucination. A delusion is more like a bizarre belief. And remember, symptoms are always on a spectrum, and that is part of what makes mental health diagnoses challenging, mental disorders challenging. You're also likely going to see just bizarre behavior, and that sometimes is hard to qualify. It's the kind of thing that when you see it, you just are like, that's a little weird, right? Sometimes that can express in social interactions. Let's say somebody stands a little too close or a little too far away, or somebody's shouting when there's no need to shout. So bizarre behavior can include or encompass a full range of behaviors. And it's the kind of thing that you know it when you see it, but sometimes it can be hard to categorize or to put your finger on. Oftentimes, and this is really, I think, one of the bigger ones and one of the most obvious ways that schizoaffective disorder presents that is different and discrete from schizophrenia or from bipolar disorder, and that is unchanging facial expressions. So the look on someone's face doesn't match what you might be experiencing. So let's say that something really exciting just happened, or you got some really good news, but their affect, their facial expression doesn't change much from 20 minutes earlier, right? So there's just sort of maybe more of a flat affect or less range of expression than you might be used to seeing. Disorganized thought and speech can range Also, dramatically in its presentation, that can mean something as simple as not being able to follow somebody in a conversation. They start in one place and they end in a very different place, or there's just no logic to what they're saying. You're not able to follow their train of thought. And if they're communicating that way, that is evidence that their thoughts are doing the same thing. You also might see social withdrawal, meaning somebody really depressed or disconnecting from the world. Out of these 6 symptoms that we're seeing here, bizarre behavior, unchanging facial expression, social withdrawal, these are symptoms that we are going to see in any number of diagnoses, including schizophrenia, including potentially bipolar disorder, including neurodivergence or an autism spectrum disorder. So this is not so cut and dry, and that's important. However, high view, very high view from what I've seen of Nick Reiner, and that is limited. I am absolutely talking about the highest, most zoomed out view you could have. This certainly seems like an appropriate diagnosis, and I will qualify that by saying, once again, that is assuming that there are no substances of abuse in his toxicology and that he has not been using substances of abuse, because, of course, if you are taking amphetamines and you are taking opioids and you are taking them together, then yeah, you're going to see all these things, because that's what happens when you take these very powerful mood-altering substances. So it appears, from what we can infer from Alan Jackson,
what we've learned, and you can take this to the bank, is that pursuant to the laws of this state, pursuant to the law in California, Nick Reiner is not guilty of murder. Print that. Print that.
And from what TMZ is reporting, that he was not using drugs and alcohol, but that is going to be the X factor in this case, without a doubt. Now, it has been reported that Nick had changed his psychiatric medication for his schizoaffective disorder because of weight gain.
They changed it about a month before Rob and Michele were killed.
And now we know why they changed it.
This had been the big mystery. And the reason that they changed it, well, we unlocked this pretty late.
Now, again, I will stick with what I have been saying. This all depends on whether or not there has been any recent substance use and whether or not his toxicology evidences drugs of abuse. Assuming that that is not the case and that what we are looking at here is purely a situation that is induced by psychiatric medication, that is a very different story. This is me reminding you to like this video, like the video, comment, subscribe, like this video. I deal with this. We all deal with this constantly. And I saw TMZ, I saw them interviewing Dr. Drew.
And we got to thank one person in particular we got to thank for helping us unlock this, and that would be Dr. Drew.
He gave us a couple of typical side effects: sexual dysfunction and weight gain.
This is an opportunity for those of us that work in mental health, that work with this population, as I do, as I have for, my God, 15 years now, that we get the word out, because this is an enormous problem, particularly when it comes to folks who are taking antipsychotics, because many of the medications that we have used now for a decade or more to treat schizophrenia, schizoaffective disorder, bipolar disorder, many of these medications have weight gain as a number one side effect.
I think, Dr. Drew, when a lot of people heard this revelation that we found out that it was about weight gain behind the changing of the medications, I think for the average person, they think, Well, that's a vain choice. Like if you have to weigh the two things that are more important, the weight gain or being stable mentally, that why don't the doctors say, we understand you're uncomfortable with the weight gain and we'll address that, but right now we need to get the mental health side of this under control.
We are not talking about 5 pounds, okay? We are talking about serious, like jeopardizing your health type weight gain in many situations. Now, in this video, Dr. Drew is talking about GLP-1s.
I was talking with a young psychiatrist just out of training, and he said, you know, we are adding GLP-1s in almost immediately with some of these medicines to try to prevent this weight gain.
We talked about that this morning.
About whether or not, that was going to be the next question, whether that's something that you can take at the same time.
I have no direct experience with that. That's why we were talking about it, because there are certain meds you can almost all of them can cause weight gain, let's face it, but some really cause weight gain, and it's dangerous. It's not okay, and we have to do better. And the GLP-1s are, that is a perfect setting for it if it's going to work. In other words, we have a serious medical illness, schizoaffective disorder. We have medicine that could potentially precipitate another serious medical problem, obesity, diabetes, God knows what. And then you have the risk of the GLP-1s, which are well worth taking in that setting.
Well, I'll tell you something. I have seen a third of my clients who take antipsychotics and who have weight gain as a side effect try this, and many of them have not seen results because of their medication. So drugs like, which is a relatively common medication that is used to stabilize folks who experience psychosis, is a great example. This drug is notorious for stabilizing psychosis and causing weight gain that the GLP-1s do not seem to touch, okay? Now, you say, well, Sam, just give them a different antipsychotic. Well, unfortunately, it is just not that simple, and Nick Reiner is the perfect example of exactly that phenomenon. Once somebody has been stabilized on one medicine, it does not mean that they're going to take well to a different medication. Now, there are ways to do this that are preferable. Of course, people are titrated off slowly, one medication, while also titrating up on another medication slowly. And the key phrase there is slowly, to try to reduce as much as possible any of the possible side effects that could come from the transition from one medication to the other. The problem is that we are dealing with neurochemistry. And as I've said many times already, whenever we take a chemical from the outside and we put it into our body and then it goes into our brain, and the goal, whether it is to get high off a drug or to stabilize a brain, which is what psychiatric medication does, it's intended to force consistency, force continuity. There are going to be changes to the brain and the brain's chemistry and the body's chemistry. And those changes are very serious. They're very significant. This is not a game. This is people's very beinghood that we are talking about. And I cannot tell you how common this is. Now, what's not common is for somebody to murder as a result of their psychiatric medication being changed. Thank God, because if that were the case, I might not be here. That's for damn sure, because I have been through this with countless patients, countless clients. So I couldn't even count the number of folks that I've worked with over the years that have had to stop or change their medications due to side effects, with the number one always being weight gain. Number one. That's not only with antipsychotics, that's often with other medications, psychiatric medications as well, mood stabilizers, sometimes antidepressants. I mean, everybody's a little bit different.
I would just say, historically, that's what we did. we would just say, you suck it up, which is really wrong. It's just not right. And we can do better, and we should do better. And what we end up doing, usually it's the combo of sexual dysfunction and weight gain that really patients go, no, you have to change this. And we're sympathetic. We don't want to make them miserable.
The antipsychotic industry, right, pharmaceutical companies that make these medications are very aware of this problem and are all essentially, fighting each other to come up with the better antipsychotics that do not have weight gain as a possible side effect. So these are drugs that are coming out, but they are brand new. And here's the problem with brand new psychiatric medication, right? Now, we don't know what medications that Nick Reiner was on or switching to, but I've seen with my own two eyes folks who were coming off of antipsychotics that worked, that stabilized them psychologically, but it caused enormous weight gain. And then we've tried to bring in some of these newer antipsychotics that did not cause weight gain, but unfortunately, they did not work. So these drugs can cause extreme dysregulation. And in Nick Reiner's case, unfortunately, that resulted, it appears, and this is what we're seeing, this is what we're seeing now, again, assuming that there are no drugs of abuse in his body at this time, what we are seeing is medication that didn't work and possible the dysregulation that can come as a result. We have to hear all the details because, as is usually the case, the devil here is going to be in the details. But this, make no mistake, is a tragic situation, and I cannot tell you how common it is. This is as common to those of us that work with psychotic populations as air is to breath, right? It is so common. It is so common. I cannot stress it enough. So on one hand, I am absolutely, this is the worst tragedy, and nobody ever wants to see this kind of thing happening in any way, shape, or form. But hopefully this will help to shine a light, possibly, on a problem in the field of psychiatry that is enormous. And as Dr. Drew points out,
we now know that weight gain was the reason for the change. The meds that they put him on sent him into a terrible spiral. So given that it's one of the normal side effects to this, what should doctors have done? Should they have said, okay, we'll try something, or you're stable on the meds you're taking, you're going to have to deal with it?
Well, fascinating question. Obviously, in retrospect, it was a bad choice, right? That's a very easy position for us to take now. But at the time, it is completely legitimate. You can't allow our medication to ruin a person's life, either their health, their physical health, because they're becoming obese, or their interpersonal lives because they have severe sexual dysfunction from the medicine. And they'll stop them on their own oftentimes because of these side effects. And that's often how people end up out on the street.
Clients will take themselves off of their medication on their own, right? Because we all know that the biggest problem that psychiatry and arguably mental health has across the board is non-compliance, people not taking their meds, right? Because, of course, if you take your meds and they're working, then you don't think you need them anymore, right? So you stop taking them, but you don't realize that the reason that you feel better is because you've been taking your meds the way you were supposed to all along, right? So, unfortunately, though, these side effects and TMZ and Dr. Drew talk about sexual side effects, and those are also incredibly significant. But there are, make no mistake, weight gain is the number one reason that people stop taking their medication, absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt. And that is a huge, huge problem in mental health.
It is the defense counselor's duty to protect the rights of the individual, as it is the prosecution's duty to uphold and defend the laws of the state. Justice for all. Only we have a problem here.
I live inside my own world of make-believe. Kids screaming in the cradles, profanities. I see the world through ice covered in ink and bleach. Cross out the ones who heard my cries and watched me weep. I love everything. Fire spreading all around my room. My world's so bright, it's hard to breathe, but that's alright. Hush.